Hey everyone, good morning. It's Anna J. Walner with the Author Library, and today I am pleased to have with me author Edward M. Lerner. Edward, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi. I am, as Anna said, an author, and before that, I was a scientist and an engineer. I worked at some pretty interesting places over the years: Bell Labs, Honeywell, Northrop Grumman, Hughes Aircraft. And since I write science fiction, those are some great places to be from.
Yes, absolutely. I'm sure that a lot of experience that you've had in the past has helped in the writing of your books. So yes, Edward M. Lerner is a science fiction author, and your latest book, Deja Doomed, has such an interesting premise. Can you tell us more about it? I mean, the reviews are amazing.
I'm delighted with the reviews. And my personal favorite from a previous interview was, "Holy crap, this is a great book." Okay, talking about the book. So lots of science fiction deals with meeting aliens for the first time, them finding us or us finding them. And I've written books like that. I am still fascinated with the premise, but I wanted to do something different. And the way I did things differently was to make the encounter disjoint in time. That's to say, we don't actually meet aliens. We find relics that were left behind eons ago. Now, the only way you can keep relics around for eons is to not keep them on Earth. Earth has weather and earthquakes, and you wait long enough and the continents drift and one collapses underneath another. I put my relics on the moon. And, the moon is a vacuum, so you don't have to worry about bacteria eating things.
Right.
And if you put things underground in lava tunnels, which are naturally occurring caves, the temperature is constant at about minus 30 degrees. Stuff lasts forever. So that's the premise. And in the near future, when we all hope, at least we science fiction types, hope there are people living on the moon, there's the opportunity to encounter such a relic. I also put it into a Cold War, not a Cold War, a space race setting. I've got Americans, Russians, and Chinese all on the moon, and everyone would like to have a monopoly on this alien technology if they can find it, if they can reverse engineer the relics. So
That is,
that's it.
I mean, that right there, I'm invested in the book from just hearing you describe it. I love things like that are written so well from a scientific standpoint, and it does take a lot to really write a science fiction book well, because unlike fantasy, there are rules that you must abide by that are rooted in science itself. So you must have some background and degrees in science.
I do. I have a degree in physics and a graduate degree in computer engineering. And I worked for aerospace companies for much of my career. For 7 years, I was at Hughes Aircraft, which is a company that doesn't exist anymore. It's been swallowed by Raytheon, which is a huge aerospace company. So for 7 years, I was a NASA contractor. I worked on what was at the time NASA's third largest program, the Earth Observing System. A different part of Hughes developed training simulators for NASA, so I got to play around with the Space Shuttle training simulator. I crashed it every time, but it was a simulator, so that's okay. Thing has the aerodynamic properties of a brick. I wandered around in the International Space Station simulator. I saw the neutral buoyancy pool, which is where astronauts train for spacewalks. It's the world's largest swimming pool, basically, with a well-maintained level of salt and other chemicals in it.
Salinity.
So you're not buoyant, you don't sink, you kind of float around. It's not exactly like being in space because all that water keeps you from moving things quickly, but it's the closest you can come on Earth. So long story short, I got to do lots of neat things that became grist for later stories.
Well, so you've been here. Did you work in Houston? Because the Johnson Space Center is right down the road from me. I've been there several times.
I've been there. Most of my work was for Goddard Space Center in the DC metro area, and that's where I live. But sure, I've been to Johnson several times. That's where the simulators are I was talking about, and I've been to Cape Canaveral to watch a shuttle launch. As I said, it's great background for an aspiring science fiction author.
Absolutely. I know I've always been fascinated with the fact, we are, what did Carl Sagan say? We are all the stuff of stars. So you may not realize it, but we actually have a lot of alien matter here on Earth, because it's minor particulates. You have stardust on your rooftop, believe it or not. So I love science fiction. I love science in general.
And I'm
a little bit of a geek. I'm sorry.
No reason to be sorry. I'm all in favor of that. And among the reasons I write, I like to think I inspire some young folk to get into science and engineering, as happened with me.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing whenever you read a book like yours, the simple act of Googling something, a terminology or a term that you've used, then that leads people on a quest to discover more about that particular topic. And then whether they know it or not, they deserve or derive a passion for it. And then you've most likely inspired someone to expand their knowledge base, or even, decide that that's what field they want to go into.
Yeah. Even if they don't Google, I like to think that reading my book, they'll learn some stuff by osmosis.
Well, in the Sherlock Chronicles and the Paradise Quartet, we see an entirely new spin on the classic Sherlock Holmes, which is set in the future. I'm equally as fascinated with this book as well, which also has rave reviews.
Okay. The second book you mentioned, Sherlock Chronicles and Paradise Quartet, is in a way two books in one. When I was growing up and first getting into science fiction, one of the greatest ways to find the stuff was on paperback racks in drugstores and groceries, things you don't really see anymore. And one of the most popular types of science fiction was the Ace Double. It was two short novels in one paperback. You read one, flip the book over, read the other, two separate covers. And this book is kind of in that mode. It's an homage. So the Sherlock Chronicles is 4 cases of a futuristic detective, and the Paradise Quartet is an unrelated series of stories I can talk about separately. But you asked about Sherlock. My Sherlock is a bored artificial intelligence who has all those endless nanoseconds he needs to fill on his supercomputer. And one day he's approached by a person with a thorny problem, and he figures, what could the harm be in helping this, slow-witted human solve her problem? Well, yes, there was some harm, And in his successive cases, the stakes get higher and higher. And some of the situations he faces are eventually existential.
Oh, wow. So we do see a little bit of self-awareness come into the AI situation here.
Oh, he's entirely self-aware.
Entirely self-aware. Okay.
And one of the things he comments on is no artificial intelligence is self-aware until quantum computing comes around, because awareness and intelligence are not algorithms. It takes something random, and quantum mechanics is inherently random. So he's running on a quantum computer. His quantum mind peers are all running in other quantum computers, and a lot of the constraints on them are tied into quantum mechanics, which is one of the topics that fascinates me, quantum mechanics.
Wow, I would love to pick your brain and talk more about that, quantum physics and quantum mechanics, especially with computing nowadays. I mean, do you think that we will eventually get to that point in society? Do you think that that's a possibility? I mean, with the rate that technology is developing and exploding, do you think that's a possibility?
Computers are a very young technology, and I think it would be very odd if they have already plateaued. So yes, I expect them to go a lot farther. In terms of quantum computing specifically, those have been built. They're still pretty modest. The requirement for a practical quantum computer is to have thousands of quantum bits. And because of the difficulty of the technology at this point, we're lucky to be able to maintain a few dozen quantum bits. So there are some practical challenges before we can scale up. Quantum bits are inherently extremely fragile things, and in fact, that complication factors into some of my Sherlock's adventures. Incidentally, he doesn't always think of himself as Sherlock. He thinks of himself from time to time as all sorts of famous fictional detectives. He starts out in a noir mode, more of a Mike Hammer sort of thing. He has a lot of personality. He was a lot of fun to write.
I bet. And then the other book that you mentioned, the Paradise Quartet. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Okay, that's another set of 4 stories, hence the quartet. And that began in a novelette I wrote way back in something like 2007. And that was also trying to look at a familiar science fiction trope and doing something different with it. The trope there was the generation ship. In the typical generation ship story, it's only possible to travel between stars comparatively slowly. You build a ship that can sustain basically a mobile town for generations until they can get to the other side. And by the time they get there, they've always, for story purposes, conveniently forgotten why they want to do it, or they have adjusted to life traveling this way and they see no reason to move to a planet with dangerous animals on it. Okay, so my spin on it was, yeah, they got there fine. They knew why they wanted to get there. Their ship was falling apart, in fact, and they were eager to get off. The problem was, in order to establish themselves, they had to adjust themselves. They had to change their own biology to live there. And then instead of the disaster happening on the trip, the disaster happened after they successfully got down to the planet. So the first story had a disaster I will not describe. And then the rest of the series, the remaining 4 planets, were the slow evolution of what happened to these people and their slow crawl back to technology.
Wow, so it's almost has a little bit of a mix of a dystopian feel with and it sounds as if you blended in genetics and evolution and adaptation into the stories as well as part of human nature, which we all have to do from time to time. But we're gonna have to do it here pretty soon, getting back into the real world.
Well, I hope that the effects of climate change aren't nearly as catastrophic as what I did to my characters. I will fine tune one of your interpretations of the stories. Things get bad, but I don't do dystopias. I'm optimistic enough that I think if we set our minds to things, we can usually dig ourselves out. You know, the first law of holes is when you find yourself in one, stop digging.
Great advice. Great life advice. So how did you, I mean, we've already answered this, how you found yourself drawn to the genre of science fiction. I mean, just having a passion for science in and of itself. So how much research goes into each book? Because unlike fantasy, in sci-fi, there are rules. So how long does it typically take you to work through the research process? What is that like as a science fiction author?
On average, it takes me about a year to do a book. And for the first few months, that's heavily oriented towards the research because the science and the technology that's available to the characters represent a set of constraints. And until I know how hard things are for the characters and what they can and cannot do and how fast they can get from here to there and what could kill them and how they can kill bad guys if that's appropriate, all of those sorts of things need to be worked out iteratively with developing the plot. And then it's 6 to 9 months to write the story. Research takes a lot of different forms. Okay, in this day and age, and being a computer guy, obviously a lot of it is on the internet. And although there's a lot of garbage on the internet, if you know how to vet your sources, there are lots of reliable sources. I buy a lot of books. And
I see that.
you can see on Zoom the bookshelves behind me, yeah. And a lot more that are in Kindle that you can't see. And when I think I understand a topic, or if I figure out that I really don't, I often reach out to experts. One of the best things about being an author is all the experts out there who are eager to help out. And so I have lots of opportunities to interact with, really brilliant people. If I have questions about things, I'm going to tell my favorite anecdote about interacting with experts.
I kind of have a little bit of a crush on Neil deGrasse Tyson. You don't know him, do you?
I don't.
Okay.
Okay. So several years ago, I was doing research for a novel, one of whose main characters was a radio astronomer. The book is called Energized, by the way. And part of the plot was going to be set at a radio astronomy observatory, go figure. I happen to live a few hours away from the Green Bank Observatory, which is one of the branches of the National Radio Astronomy Observatory, which has facilities all around the country. I reached out to the public affairs officer and asked if I could possibly meet with an astronomer or two. And she said, why don't you come on out and take the public tour, and I'll set up interviews for you. And if you can come on a Wednesday, you can come to our weekly staff lunch and introduce yourself, and maybe you'll hear some stuff that's useful. I thought this was way cool. And of course, I did all of that. When I introduced myself and said I was there, all of a sudden, all of these engineers and scientists and astronomers wanted to brainstorm details of the plot with me. And they spent their lunch hour helping me work out nuances of plot.
Is that amazing?
Oh, it was terrific.
Oh, wow. That would be like, oh, that would be so cool. And guys, I cannot list, as he's already mentioned, a couple of books that I haven't brought up. I cannot list all of, you have quite the catalog, more than I can possibly cover on the show. How long have you been publishing? How long have you been an author?
I started writing in the mid 80s, but it was slow going because of the pesky day job. And my priority had to be, I had a family and kids who would eventually go to college.
Right.
My first novel was published in 1991. The second one was not out until 2005. That gives you an idea of the pesky other priorities.
Yes.
Okay.
Very familiar.
Yeah, the second novel sold in 2004. And a couple of months after that, I said to myself, okay, if you sell two, the first one really wasn't a fluke. Maybe you can do this full time. And by that point, I'd been doing the full-time techie thing for 30 years, and I was ready to do something different as much as I enjoyed it. So in 2004, I took the plunge. I gave up the day job. I started writing full time, and I've been at it ever since. I haven't
regretted it.
No. My wife says I'm much happier in this job than the day job. And so the two books we primarily talked about, Deja Doomed and Sherlock Paradise, are books 21 and 22. So the pace picked up after I was doing it full time.
I brought those up because they are the newest releases that you have. I have everyone make sure that you check out the links in the description below for Edward's Amazon page, author page, so that you can see his entire collection of books.
That would be commendable.
What would you say? I mean, I think that you already answered this. What is the best part of being an author for you?
I did mention it, and that's that access to all these wonderful experts, a variation on that beyond interacting with them is just that it focuses my curiosity. It's one thing to say, gee, I would like to learn about, pick a topic, nanotechnology. It's hard to focus. It's hard to know where to start. It's hard to maintain the interest. But if I say, I'm going to write a book about nanotechnology, then there are particular aspects of it that I get to deal in. And I did write such a book. It's called Small Miracles. And the quote unquote miracles in question were nanobots used for medical purposes that swim around in our body and repair things from the inside. Of course, in any novel, something has to go horribly wrong. And so I got to look into both, okay, what could go horribly wrong? And then what would responsible engineers and scientists do to prevent things from going horribly wrong? And then how could they go horribly wrong anyway? And how could the technology be abused? And so it was a lot of fun. And I had so much fun doing that research and got so far into it that a biophysicist I was working with said, you know, Ed, this is a novel. You can stop now.
That's amazing. Nanotechnology, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're not quite there yet. It's very much still a theory at this point and a work in progress, but it is something that is truly interesting to me. Can you explain a little bit about what nanotechnology is? I know that people have heard the word bandied around, but may not actually know what it means.
Okay. And nanotechnology, like artificial intelligence, like quantum computing, is one of these terms that's been overhyped so much that we really need new terms. At its simplest level, nanotechnology just means building things at the scale of nanometers, which is a trillionth of a meter. So our familiar microelectronics is at the level of microns. And even in the most modern microelectronics, we're dealing with artifacts whose smallest components are 20 or 30 atoms across. In nanotechnology, we're dealing more with individual atoms. And there are degrees of nanotechnology, what kind of sophistication we try to deal with. The simplest level of nanotechnology, and to some extent we're there, is trying to build defect-free materials. It's too expensive to build anything practical that way. But if, for sake of argument, you could avoid defects in steel, just common everyday steel,
Right.
it would be many times stronger than the stuff that's built today. And if you build stuff that's many times stronger, you don't have to use as much of it, and you can make things smaller and lighter. You could build a car that would weigh a few hundred pounds instead of a few thousand pounds, and it would be just as strong and just as good at defending you in a crash. Carbon nanotubes are probably the sexiest nanotech these days. A carbon nanotube is basically carbon atoms arranged in the same shape as chicken wire. And if you roll a sheet of this carbon molecule into a tube, it has wonderful properties. It's extremely strong, depending how you make it. It can be very low resistance. It can be a conductor, or it can be a semiconductor, and so you can build electronics out of it. And a lot of what I did in the novel Small Miracles is based on carbon nanotube technology. That's all what's practical in nanotech. The kind of stuff that's not yet practical is building complex machines that are still small enough to move around in you. So for people who are old enough to remember the movie The Fantastic Voyage, it had submarines swimming around in a human. We're not there yet.
No, not yet.
Yeah. So there's a lot that's been done in nanotech and a lot yet to go.
Well, it has been a fantastic pleasure having you on today. And I just, I enjoyed getting to talk, letting my geek side out for a little while, and getting to talk with you about your books and the science behind them. So thank you so much for coming on the show today.
My pleasure, Anna.
All right, guys, as always, make sure that you subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss out on more great upcoming guests and content. And everyone out there, stay safe, stay healthy, and we will see you again soon. Bye.
Bye.